Good evening and welcome to Watchman on the Wall. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're here in front of the National Assembly building at Parliament in Cape Town, waiting for the President's State of the Nation address in a few hours. With me is my co-host Jackie Giorgio, and for the first time, Leanne Pillay. Now, Leanne, I want to start with you.
Yes.
What are you expecting to hear from the President tonight?
Well, I think coming from the finance industry, one of the main concerns or things on my mind is, what is the president going to discuss with regard to our economy and improving our economy? If you look at the rand, the depreciation of the rand, the cost of petrol constantly rising, food costs constantly rising, what is the government going to implement to improve that?
Yeah. I think most of South Africa is with you, worried about the economy. And you, Jackie, what do you want to hear from President Zuma tonight?
The truth. I think it would be great to actually hear some practical, realistic and honest feedback as to how he's performed, as to what we can expect this upcoming year. We know it's an election year. His speech is most likely to be padded with all kinds of promises. And I really hope that the people, not only at home, but those in South Africa, will take a critical look at his speech and actually hold him to account.
But are you still confident about South Africa as a nation?
Errol, I am, and I have a lot of hope for the future of our country. I'm a very positive pro-South African, but I must be honest, of late when you look at the news, you look at the crime stats, you look at the rand, it almost seems like our government is so divorced from the reality on the ground, and Kandla scandal, that they don't even care, and that for me is a bit disillusioning.
Yeah, I think a lot of people share those sentiments as well. I want to ask you the same thing, Leanne. In the finance industry, you come from a big, wonderful family in Bloemfontein. Are you confident about the future?
I'm hopeful. I think this evening, perhaps the president might discuss the successes of what the government has achieved in the last year, but perhaps not deal with the critical issues that this country is facing. And I am hopeful that things to come will improve. We have an amazing country, but what we do with it, that's the key. That's the important thing.
Thank you for those sentiments. We are in Cape Town. It's always windy here, and these poor ladies, whenever we're reporting from Cape Town, we have the wind factor. But we're going to enjoy our time here this evening. We hope you can enjoy it with us. Later on, after the President's State of the Nation address, we're going to interview some of the ministers, the major role players in our country. So stick around for that. I'm speaking to Lee and Quinton. Lee's from KwaZulu-Natal, Quinton's from Kimberley. So Lee, tell me, what are you expecting from the president's speech tonight?
Well, since this year the theme is 20 years of democracy, I'll be expecting to hear what the development is in our country from 1994 up until today, 2014. Obviously, there's been a lot of development. I mean, the country is beautiful, but I'd like to know what he thinks is the most significant compared to the apartheid days where now we live in freedom and we have equality for everyone.
Thanks, that was great. And Quinton, what do you think the government should be focusing on this year and in the next 5 years as a young man?
I think education of the youth plays a very important role because we are the futures of the country. So I think education plays the biggest role.
Are you saying that you don't think education is where it should be, that we need to improve on it?
I think we do need to improve on the standard of education in South Africa. As a future teacher, I think the standard of education has to be improved, and I think the willingness in the youth they need to be willing to study and learn to become the future of the country.
Lee, are you confident that the country is heading in the right direction as a young person? Are you confident about your future in South Africa?
I mean, if we're comparing it to apartheid and what we are today, I'm definitely happy with where I'm going in terms of my education in South Africa. So I think to some extent we are getting somewhere, but just as Quinton mentioned, education definitely can be improved in our country. But for now, I think baby steps, slowly but surely, we're getting there.
Lee and Quinton, thank you so much for talking to us. You give me a lot of confidence for this nation, just meeting beautiful young people like you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This evening, I'm hoping that the president will be talking today about corruption.
The labor regulations, because of especially our mothers and fathers, the work in South Africa must be put in an effort that into concentration, because the work is a failure, especially in South Africa. The people don't have job opportunities, especially our youth. There's no job opportunities in South Africa.
So you're hoping that they'll create more jobs this year?
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else?
I just hope they create more jobs because the crime in the country is like shocking. I just hope it just lowers down.
now call on the Honorable the President to address the joint sitting. The President.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, we're able to overcome all that pain of the past and build a new society. We have built strong institutions of democracy. We buried the undemocratic, unrepresentative, oppressive, and corrupt state that was serving a minority. We formed a unitary state, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, answerable to and representative of all South Africans. We created a thriving constitutional democracy with well-functioning arms of the state, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. We have Chapter 9 institutions which support democracy and protect the rights of citizens. Liberation and democracy have also created space for an active civil society and a free media. Liberation also brought for the first time the promise of gender equality. The representation of women in public institutions has increased considerably since the dawn of freedom, and the extension of basic services also benefits women. All these attributes have made South Africa a much better place to live in now than it was ever been before. However, our country still faces the triple challenge of poverty, inequality, and unemployment, which we continue to grapple with. Dealing with these challenges has become a central focus of all democratic administrations. We elected to focus on 5 priorities: education, health, the fight against crime and corruption, rural development and land reform, as well as creating decent work.
I'm standing in Parliament waiting for the members to come out of the National Assembly building, where we're going to be talking to some of the leading ministers and members of government about the President's speech. In a few minutes, they'll come out of that building and we'll try to make sense of everything the President said tonight. Mr. Gwede Mantashe, were you excited with the President's speech tonight?
No, what was important about the speech is the coherence. If you take the last State of the Nation address and today, all it did today was to account for the work done over the last 5 years. Reminded the nation that at the beginning of the term, we identified 5 areas of priority and accounting on each one of them, and added others that is work in progress.
Are you concerned about the protests and the increasingly violent protests around the country?
We're not concerned about protests. That is a right enshrined in the Constitution. We're concerned about the violent nature of the protest, because when you are involved in violent protests, you are exercising a right, but you are trampling on other people's right. So when you have a right to protest, you can't have a right to destroy and actually eliminate life. You can't have that right. Equally important was the emphasis by the president on the police being careful on dealing with protests, because you should not have any protester dying in the hands of the police. There must be a different way of dealing with protests. So that right is dear to us. But if it is violent and it is handled with violence by police, that is actually tampering with the right.
Okay. Are you confident? Is the ANC confident about the elections in 2014?
Confidence is a function of talking to the people and the people seeing the progress that is being made. As far as the progress that we're making in the country, changing the face of the country, made the country better than it was in 1994, our people will actually need no reminder on that. They will see the progress. We must also equally acknowledge challenges and problems that are actual obstacles on the way, and not pretend as if there's nothing happening and say, we have problems in this area, this is how we want to overcome them.
Mr. Montage, thank you for talking to us at TBN. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, the HIV and AIDS turnaround is one of the biggest achievements of this administration. And we are used as a model country by the United Nations AIDS program, UNAID. Mother-to-child transmission of HIV has declined sharply, and we have doubled the number of people who are receiving antiretroviral treatment from 1 million to 2.4 million people in 2013. More than 20 million South Africans have taken the HIV test since the launch of the campaign in 2011, which indicates confidence in the health system. Life expectancy is now firmly on an upward trend. South Africans are now living longer.
Here with Reverend Kenneth Meshwe. We've just heard the State of the Nation speech by President Jacob Zuma. Reverend, what are some of your thoughts on the speech?
Well, firstly, it was a very cleverly written speech. He started by spending so much time on the fallen comrades, his fallen comrades, because he was trying to create sympathy from the many voters out there who are unhappy with government's performance. When you remember the many violent service protests that have been taking place, that's a clear indication that the people are not happy. So he had to get their sympathy by referring so many times to the people who are dead. Now, we know that government obviously is focusing too much on people who are dead than on people that are alive. So that was a clever move on his behalf. Now, secondly, the important thing that he also said that needs to be commented on, he spoke about many government successes. Now, the people on the ground don't agree with him. If people on the ground agreed with him, they would not be violent, number one. Number two, they would not be saying they are not going to vote. What our challenge is as leaders of the opposition is to try and convince people to go and vote. Say to them that if you are not happy with government performance, give us an opportunity, give us a chance to rule South Africa, because those who were ruling you, they were lying to you. So get other people rather than say we are not going to vote. People don't want to vote again. Why? Because they are upset with the performance of this government. But the last thing maybe, he spoke about a statement that everybody will agree with, that South Africans want to live in a corrupt-free society. It is very true. But he did not tell us about the fingers that are pointing him. There are so many allegations about and against the president regarding corruption. In the early days, he said, I want to go to court to clear my name. But now, when the courts are taking him seriously, when the people are taking him seriously, they want him to go to court. He doesn't want to go to court. Why, if he's innocent, doesn't he want to go to court? The courts would be the best place to clear his name. But because he knows that there is something stinking somewhere, something is wrong somewhere, he doesn't want to go to court. So we are saying, Mr. President, we agree with you. South Africans want to live in a corrupt-free society, but get clean on Kandla. How much money that belongs to the taxpayers did you use for your private stuff that you must pay back? The ACD believes pay back what you used unlawfully.
So in other words, you disagree with the comment that he made earlier in his speech that corruption has been buried in 1994?
It is not true. He himself knows. If he's not before the cameras, before Parliament, saying, Mr. President, be honest. You are not telling the truth. He may agree that he's not telling the truth, but maybe because of political correctness, he will stick his ground. But he definitely did not tell the truth. Corruption in this country is destroying our nation. That is why I think we need a righteous government to deal with corruption. A righteous government that will not protect anybody, but that will beat all those and take them to court, those who are involved in corruption.
Fantastic. So the strategy that the ACDP has in preparation for the elections, what would you have to say about that?
One of the challenges for the ACDP is for those Christians and those voters out there who don't want to vote. We say to them as the ACDP, when you are not happy with your doctor, you don't say, I don't want to do anything with doctors anymore. You look for another doctor. When you are not happy with the performance of teachers where your child is going to school, you don't say, my child will not go to school anymore. You look for another school where your child will be taught better. So we are saying, you have been failed by the ungodly. It is time to look for the godly. As you know that we have the mind of Christ, I believe we have the solutions that can help this nation. Remember, when Egypt was facing a possible economic collapse, the wise men of Egypt failed. The professors failed. Everybody failed until they brought in a man that was connected to God, Joseph. And when Joseph came, he came with a solution. So I believe that the solutions for this country are with those that have the mind of Christ. So South African voters, South African Christians, give the ACDP a chance, and you will ask yourself the question, why did I wait for so long? Because these people are delivering.
True. Very good. Do you feel that the ACDP has been gaining support with the upcoming elections?
Well, definitely. Many people who are upset and many of those who are voting for the ANC are now saying it is time to look to the godly, because these people that we have been supporting have been stealing and looting the government coffers. So now we must look for people that we can trust, people that will not steal. And I promise the ACDP members, the ACDP leaders, and the ACDP cabinet will not steal from South Africans.
Thank you so much for your time, Reverend.
Importance of economy, particularly to the mine owners and leaders of the unions. In no way can we have conflict that destroys the economy. I believe the mine owners care for their benefits, that the mines should operate, they should not stop. But I also equally believe that any leader of the union cares for the welfare of the workers. It must not be easy to make workers lose jobs. I believe trade union leaders, one of their interests is to ensure that workers have good conditions, they've got the wages that is decent, and they do not lose jobs. It's very important as we negotiate, try to find solutions to take all of these matters into account. Because at the end, if these two sides don't work together, even if they have different interests, it affects the economy of the country at the end. And we need to bear this in mind as we negotiate, as we agree on certain deals that we make as we negotiate. I just thought it's important to underline this. It must not be easy for anyone to say, let us strike, or for somebody to say, I'm now reducing the workforce. All of us should think together. The democratic government supports the right of citizens to express themselves. The right to protest peacefully and unarmed is enshrined in the Constitution. However, when protests threaten lives and property and destroy valuable infrastructure intended to serve the community, they undermine the very democracy that upholds the right to protest. The dominant narrative in the case of the protests in South Africa has been to attribute them to alleged failures of government. However, the protests are not simply the result of failures of government, but also of the success in delivering basic services. When 95% of the households have access to water, the 5% who still need to be provided for feel they cannot wait a moment longer.
I'm speaking to Mr. Peter Mulder, the leader of the Freedom Front Plus and also Deputy Minister of
Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. Yeah.
Mr. Mulder, were you excited about the president's speech?
Well, I think it was exactly as we predicted. It was a brag speech, if I may call it that, for purposes of the election. Maybe we'll try to understand it, but my problem is it didn't address the real crisis that we have at the moment of the country. If it's such a good story, why are so many municipalities burning? And I don't think we can wait until after the election to get some solutions for that. And that maybe was the disappointment part.
Yeah, the next question I was going to ask you, do you think that the most pressing issues facing South Africa, do you think that the president dealt with that adequately?
Well, one of those are job creation and stimulating the economy. And I listened to new ideas, and it was all the same ideas as the past that did not succeed. So there was nothing new in that, and that's my problem. Too much emphasis on the past, too little on the future. If I try to be positive, the whole question on the mining companies, bosses on the one side and the unions, and asking them to be more responsible in what they're doing, I think we surely will support him. At the moment, they're destroying our economy. Being selfish as far as I'm concerned, I would like some more patriotism and thinking about South Africa in addressing these issues and solving these problems.
Are you excited about the Collective for Democracy, the 8 political parties, opposition parties coming together to fight this election in a consultative and collective way?
I think so. I think if you look what happened with the DA and their efforts, there's 2 ways of addressing this problem of cooperation. Our voting system, proportional system, in the end needs coalitions who are working together, but you must get the right recipe. If the party wants to swallow another one, it's not working. It's not the best recipe. You lose a lot of votes. I think the Collective got the right recipe. Keeping your identity, getting your niche market, and then cooperating will get more opposition voters than some other systems as the DA tried. And I think that was the wrong way. We can't afford to lose opposition voters that will not vote now.
Is the Freedom Front Plus confident about the upcoming elections in May?
I think so, One of the statistics that worries me is that more people did not vote in the previous election than people that voted for the ANC. Now, surely if those people can be moved to starting to participate, we can make a big difference. And the Collective, surely if you look at the effort in there, can be a very big factor in that and helping people to get to the voting poll.
But thank you, Mr. Mulder.
Thank you.
Honorable members, South Africa is indeed a much better place to live in. Let me now report on our social transformation program. Education is a ladder out of poverty for millions of our people. We are happy, therefore, that there is a huge increase in the enrollment of children in school from pre-primary to tertiary level. The number of children attending grade R has more than doubled. moving from about 300,000 to more than 700,000 between 2003 and 2011. A draft policy framework towards universal access to Grade R has been gazetted for public comment with a view to making Grade R compulsory. The matric pass rate has gone up from around 61% in 2009 to 78% last year. And the bachelor passes improve each year. Through the annual national assessments, we keep track of improvements and interventions needed, especially in maths and science.
Good evening, Mr. Mfundisi, and thank you very much for joining us on Watchmen on the Wall. What were your thoughts on President Zuma's speech tonight?
Well, nothing particularly new. It is the old rhetoric, the repetition of the same facts all over, except with this little bit of tinge and all that. But one would have expected, especially in education, one would have expected the president to elaborate plainly what it is that they intend doing about the infrastructure in the primary schools back home. I mean, taking into account the young child who died in the toilet because of neglect and all that. Those are some of the things that one would have looked forward to have them picked up. Still in the issue of education, well, it's something good for the government to praise themselves, to say the matric results were good, which we don't deny. But the truth behind the matter is that they just had to make room for new entrants because they are changing a system. They are going into the cap system. So, in fact, the minister herself did say it when she announced the results. So, it is also equally important that as the children passed in their numbers, in the same way, there should have been enough room made or provision made for their bursaries. A number of them were enrolled at universities, but they could not get registered because of lack of funds. So one would have thought that much better planning could have been done. As you pass them all, make sure that they all get funding and you proceed with that. We welcome the two new universities and hope they will ease the congestion in the other institutions. Otherwise, all round, the question of the PICC, Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission, is something that will still have to be looked into, because some of the issues that the president spoke about, he spoke about only in Natal, in Mpumalanga, in the Northwest, where there is a problem that we raised last year with him and even acknowledged that he was going to do something about it. Only last week, people nearly died on that bad road between Koster and Lichtenberg, which was supposed to have been completed by 2010 for the World Cup. It's still incomplete. Now, those are some of the things that one would have expected. As the president spoke about their good scores, he must also raise that they failed at A, B, C, and D. And that is what, that's it.
Okay, and as the leader of the United Democratic Christian Party, what are you planning to do? What is your strategy for the elections? And what is your thoughts on just the elections that are coming up and where the country's going?
Well, as a Christian party, we are looking forward to ensure that the morals and the aptitude of people is protected. We will be going to these elections to say to the people, the United Christian Democratic Party has to offer better instances in education. By the way, the United Christian Democratic Party is not new in government. We were in government in the erstwhile Bophuthatswana. So the instances you have, the institutions you have, the buildings you have, and the infrastructure you have, and the quality of the people, even in this new government, the public service is the product of this party by and large. So we are launching our manifesto on the 23rd in Mabatu, and it is in that instance where we are saying the government in terms of police, let them make sure that as the Constitution dictates, it must be a police service, not a police force.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Well, thank you very much, and we wish you very well. As a Christian channel, we also are praying for you guys that you would do well, and that God's name would be honored in our government.
Fine.
I'm speaking to Prince Buthelezi of the IFP about the president's speech tonight. What has your response been?
Well, my response is that, as I expected, this was an election speech. I think that the president actually talked with his eye on how many votes this speech can get for the ANC.
And you don't think it tackled the major issues confronting the nation now?
Not in depth, because, for instance, he admits that, one of the giants we face as a country is unemployment. But then when he goes on to say that they hope to create 6 million jobs, I think he's being dishonest, because those jobs which are created through the expanded program of the Department of Works are temporary jobs. Because he himself, in the same speech, actually said that in order to have sustained jobs, you need the economic growth of 5%, which is nowhere. We're not going to get that in the foreseeable future.
I'm gonna deviate from the speech and ask you about, there's a growing concern amongst Christians and churches in South Africa that religious freedom is being eroded. Religious freedom are being taken away from churches to preach and believe what they believe. What is your comment on that?
Well, I would say that as a Christian, it distresses me that in the first place, our constitution doesn't say anything about God. And that, in fact, instead of praying when Parliament meets, we said that it's time for reflection, and so on. And of course, there are many laws that have been passed which go against, the gospel.
And that distresses you?
But as a Christian, it does distress me. It does.
You're now part of the. I've just heard that the IFP is now part of the Collective for Democracy. Are you excited about this, working with 8 other parties to contest the election?
Well, actually, it's not something new for me, because even during the apartheid era, I was the chairman of the Black Alliance, which consists of the Labour Party of the Colours, the Reform Party, which was led by Yellen Chinsami, and parties from what you call. So I wouldn't say I'm excited, but I think it is the right thing for us to do. We'll see how it goes.
So you think this collective, this participation between the 8 parties give you a better chance to oppose the policies of the ANC?
I think that it makes our voice stronger together if we sing from the same hymn sheet, you see. Yes.
We did an interview with Michael Cassidy recently in which you featured talks before 1994, Michael Cassidy meeting with you, prayer meetings. You were a part of that, so it was good to see you in those videos.
Quite so. And of course you remember that Professor Okumu had been brought to South Africa by Michael Cassidy, and he played a very important role, because we're not going to elections as IFP. But in fact, it was his intervention which actually made us decide on the 19th of April to go to the election on the 27th. Otherwise, I think that my party would have disappeared if we didn't participate in the election.
Well, the Christian community in South Africa is doing the same thing. We are praying for these elections. We're praying that God is going to intervene, that new things are going to happen. And we pray for you as well, that your party is going to do well, and that God bless you.
Thanks very much. Well, absolutely. We have always created, we always stress our dependence on God, to the extent that, when I was in charge of KwaZulu, we had a prayer breakfast in which Michael and others participated, and people of all faiths participated, because we believe that it was important before any parliamentary session to have this prayer breakfast, which of course I copied from the President of America's prayer breakfast in Washington, to which I was invited. Yes.
Well, Mr. Buthelezi, thank you for talking to us at Watchman on the Wall, and we wish you well in the elections.
All right, good evening, Minister Davies. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'm very interested to chat to you and actually to hear your thoughts on President Zuma's speech and the state of our nation.
Well, the President gave a close-out report of the work of this administration, but also the end of this administration is coinciding with the 20-year anniversary of democracy, and government is preparing a 20-year review, which will be published in due course. And I think the President was telling us that on all of the indicators over the last 20 years, South Africa is a much better place than it was. This is everything ranging from crime and security, human rights, democracy practice, the fight against HIV/AIDS, the life expectancy of our people, ranging to the economy, where despite the worst economic crisis at any time since the 1930s, we have actually succeeded in spending 1 trillion rand on infrastructure, which has been a significant counter-cyclical response. And also we've seen gains in a number of our sectors, including in the area that we work in as the Department of Trade and Industry, which is manufacturing. So despite the difficult circumstances, I think that progress has been made across the board. Of course, there's still a huge amount of challenges that we face, but I think the President was indicating that the strategy for addressing those, which will be linked to the implementation of the National Development Plan, that will come after the elections as the State of the Nation address of the next administration.
And Minister Davies, you champion obviously the DTI and the work that you guys do. I know you work on a macro level. I also know that you work even on a small enterprise level, just helping the average man on the street. Do you think that 2014 has any kind of positive upswing when we look at our finances and the rand and the exchange? What are we looking at here?
Well, I think that the currency is exogenous shock. It's factors in the world economy. We had some years ago, we had an overvalued currency. This was because there was very loose monetary policy in the developed world. Now as the developed world begins to recover, they tighten their monetary policy. And short-term capital is now moving from emerging economies back into the developed world. That is what's causing our currency to be at this stage undervalued. Now that's having challenges for our country, but it's not an absolute disaster. The President said that it's something which exporters and also local manufacturers can take advantage of, because we now have we've moved from the situation which was very challenging for them, where the currency was overvalued. But despite this, and despite the fact that we no longer have the benefits of commodity super cycle, which basically passed its peak in 2012, we haven't got the kind of super prices for our primary products we previously had. Nonetheless, we're making progress in infrastructure development, in manufacturing, in agriculture, in tourism, and all of these are activities which diversify and strengthen our economy. So I think that our growth rate is not what it should be, but our growth rate is still positive. We are not in recession, and the African continent is an incredibly positive place. So I think overall we are well poised to move further forward.
Well, thank you very much for chatting to us. I know you've certainly allayed some skepticism that I had, and chatting to you has given me a little bit of hope for the rest of this year and where we're heading economically.
Well, I hope it has also for your viewers as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We are very privileged to have Thuli Madonsela with us now. She is our public protector and a very brave woman, one who we admire very greatly on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
It's a privilege for me to speak to you. You are a very brave and wonderful woman of integrity. Our show actually stands for integrity and just calling people into account. And I wanted to ask you on this auspicious occasion, what are your thoughts about our nation, about where we're heading, and just in general some of the issues that common South Africans are perhaps concerned about that you champion as our public protector?
Well, firstly, I would say I'm not really a hero above ordinary South Africans. The issues that my team and I deal with are issues that concern every average South African. And quietly, various South Africans are dealing with the problems, whether they deal with them as whistleblowers or they deal with them as members of institutions such as the Auditor General or the SIU. We all collectively trying to solve the problems.
And so many South Africans are positive about our future, and yet there's a lot who are feeling disillusioned just when we see what's happening happening in the RAND, we see what's happening perhaps in government. What are your thoughts on that, and perhaps any words of encouragement if you're seeing any developments for us?
We have a good reason to feel optimistic in that I think when people are saying today is better than yesterday, it is something that I share with them. People have to be optimistic because 20 years of democracy is a good opportunity for government and everyone else to reflect on what we've done well and where the gaps have been. And I do believe that there will be momentum as we go forward, particularly in the implementation of the national development plan.
Well, Ms. Valentela, if I can just say to you that so many of our Christian viewers and readers at home really support you and pray for you. And perhaps if there's any prayer requests that you have, maybe you could just share it with us so we can keep you in mind for the next while to come.
Oh, that's really wonderful, and I thank everyone who prays for us. That's very important to me and my team, and the majority of members of my team are Christians, as I am a Christian myself. I think the most important prayer for us is a prayer that gets all South Africans, particularly those in government, to operate on the basis of shared values, both in terms of what we pronounce and what we do. And when we issue reports, people firstly should look at what are the values that have informed that report. Do they share those values? And if the report is based on those shared values, then they don't delegitimize my institution, they support the report.
Well, and I know in America they are speaking of Hillary for president, but I think we should say Thuli for president.
Well, it's not a place I want to go. I think I work well assisting people in areas such as the public protector because my key interests are issues of equality, justice and human rights.
Well, thank you for your service to our country. We have Sherilyn Dudley, the MP of the ACDP. And Sherilyn, you've just finished watching President Zuma's speech. Any thoughts on it that you think our viewers at home need to take home?
Well, I think, he made it quite clear that they were not going to spell out the next 5 years, and they've really recapped on the previous 5 years. So we're going to pretty much have to wait for the new administration to spell that out as the first SONA happens after elections. Clearly we know the things that have been done right, the things that we haven't got right there in South Africa. We know that the most important thing, I think, on everybody's mind is, of course, unemployment. And everything that we touch as government, as members of parliament, needs to be geared to making sure that we can actually facilitate jobs, entrepreneurial opportunities, etc. for people in South Africa. And once we get that right, we've made a start.
Absolutely. Well, Sherilyn, good luck to the ACDP in the run-up to the elections, and know that our thoughts and our prayers are with you as you stand to represent Christ in Parliament and to actually be a voice for biblical values. And so we really wish you well, and we also pray that all the opposition parties in their own way would be able to continue to fight for democracy and to just hold the government accountable.
Well, thank you. It's a very important time at this point because the reality of how much religious freedom is under attack is becoming more and more obvious. And there is no other party apart from the ACDP that really takes that matter seriously, and it is a serious matter.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.
Well, we have concluded another opening of Parliament and State of the Nation address by President Jacob Zuma in a blustery, windy Cape Town. Jackie, how did you enjoy that?
Errol, I was quite impressed with Zuma's sense of humour, although I don't think that is actually the point of a State of a Nation address. But to be honest, when I listened to a lot of the stats, I actually felt that I questioned their authenticity. Some of them just seemed to me as if, 99% of statistics are made up. But after speaking to Minister Rob Davies, he sort of instilled a bit of confidence in me that what Zuma had to say was actually partially true. And so it gave me a little bit of hope for where the future of this country is going and just the development. It's slow, but it is going to take time.
So you're upbeat?
Yes.
That's good. And Leanne?
I think just Zuma's address covered a lot of the successes, and that's great. And granted, the country has progressed since 1994, but my question is that enough? Has it been enough up until this point over the last 20 years? Yeah, so I think I'm hopeful, but I'm curious to see if the promises and the commitments they made, are these going to be another lot of broken promises? Yeah.
So we've just concluded another opening of Parliament and State of the Nation address by the President. We enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Please remember to go to our website at familypolicyinstitute.com and register for our weekly newsletter. Also remember, the latest issue of Joy magazine is available at retail stores across the country. Thank you for joining us tonight. From Leanne Pillay.
Good night.
And from Jackie Giorgio.
Good night, and remember to vote.
Good night. God bless you.